All right, let's talk about something we've all felt. That deep, nagging urge to just quit when things get tough. But what if I told you that feeling of discomfort, that struggle, isn't a sign to stop? What if it's actually the key to unlocking your brain's full potential? We're going to dive into some pretty amazing science today. You know the feeling, right? You're trying to learn a new skill, you're deep into a really tough workout, or maybe you're just trying to get through a project you've been putting off. And then, boom, there it is. That wave of frustration, that agitation, that little voice in your head screaming at you to just stop and go do anything easier. It feels like a warning sign, doesn't it? Like your body is telling you to retreat. But what if that feeling is actually pointing you in exactly the right direction? I mean, think about it. From the time we're kids, we learn that comfort equals good and safe, and discomfort equals bad and dangerous. So when something feels frustrating or hard, our gut instinct is to slam on the brakes. We see it as this giant flashing red stop sign telling us to head back to what's familiar, what's easy. But it turns out, the latest breakthroughs in neuroscience are showing us that this instinct is not just a little off, it's fundamentally holding us back from building a stronger, more capable brain.
We usually talk about willpower like it's some kind of vague character trait, right? But what if it wasn't? What if it had a physical address, a real location, inside your brain? Well, let's go find out where it lives.
Okay, so this is the big reveal. This is where it gets really, really cool. Scientists haven't just been guessing about this stuff. They've actually located the biological engine for our grit, our determination, our sheer will to push through. It's a specific, measurable part of your brain that acts like your willpower muscle. And the most exciting part? You have direct control over how big and powerful that engine gets.
So let's give it its proper name. It's called the Anterior Midcingulate Cortex, or just aMCC for short. Now look at that definition. Scientists call this the seat of the will to live. I mean, how powerful is that? This isn't some high-level thinking area. It's a deep, fundamental part of our brain that fires up whenever we choose to forge ahead, even when it's hard. It's the part of you that says keep going when everything else is begging to stop.
And here, this is a discovery that makes this whole thing so real and tangible. It's honestly kind of shocking. When scientists looked at the brains of high performers, we're talking elite athletes, top executives, people known for their insane resilience, they found something incredible. Their aMCC was physically bigger and thicker. And on the flip side, in people who struggled with things like low motivation or depression, that same brain region was noticeably smaller. This isn't a metaphor, folks. It's biology. There's a literal, physical difference in the size of your willpower engine based on how much grit you have.
So, of course, the big question is, how do you grow it? How do you get a bigger aMCC? Do you just do more of the things you love, the things you're already good at? Well, the answer from the science is a huge, emphatic no. And this right here, this is probably the single most important takeaway from our whole conversation. The aMCC only grows when you voluntarily, intentionally do something that you find difficult and genuinely do not feel like doing. Think about it. If you love to run, going for a jog is great, but it's not growing this part of your brain. But if you hate running and it's cold and it's raining outside and you force yourself to lace up your shoes and go anyway, that's the magic moment. That's the resistance that triggers actual physical growth in your brain's willpower center. Okay, so we know what grows, that aMCC, but what about the how? How does forcing yourself to do something hard actually translate into physical brain change? Well, the answer is a totally fascinating chemical process.
So the whole system works because of a core principle called neuroplasticity. Now, you've probably heard this term before, but let's just appreciate how wild this is. For the longest time, we thought our brains were basically fixed once we became adults. We now know that's completely wrong. Your brain is much more like plastic. It's constantly changing, reshaping, and rewiring itself based on what you do, what you think, and what you experience. This means you aren't stuck with the brain you have. You can actively change its structure.
But to kick off that rewiring process, you need a specific trigger. And that trigger has a fantastic name, limbic friction. This is just the scientific term for that feeling of agitation, that stress, that confusion or frustration that you get when you're really truly challenging yourself. You know that, this is so hard, my brain hurts, feeling when you're learning to code or play guitar? That's not a sign you're failing. That is limbic friction, and it is the absolute non-negotiable ingredient for change. And this shows you exactly how it works. So first, you tackle something that's right at the edge of your current ability. Step 2, you feel that limbic friction, that discomfort. Now, here comes the magic. That feeling of struggle triggers a release of specific chemicals in your brain, mainly noradrenaline and acetylcholine. Think of these chemicals as little highlighters. They flood the zone and mark the exact brain cells, the neurons that were working so hard during that struggle. It's like they're tagging those circuits and telling your brain, hey, pay attention, this is important. Then, later when you're sleeping or in deep rest, the neuroplasticity process kicks in, and your brain gets to work strengthening and rewiring those specific connections that were highlighted. It's incredible. But if you quit when you feel the friction, you never get the chemical release, nothing gets marked, and zero change happens.
So let's just reframe this whole thing once and for all. That feeling of struggle, that friction, is not your brain telling you to tap out. It's the exact opposite. It's the biological starting gun for growth. It's the chemical signal that the doors to learning and rewiring are now open. When you feel it, you should learn to think, okay, here we go. This is it. This is the moment my brain can actually change.
Now, this all sounds great in a science lab, but how do we actually apply it to our real, messy daily lives? I mean, we can't just sit around and wait for difficult things to happen to us. The secret lies in actively, intentionally choosing our own challenges. And what's wild is that this isn't some new age idea. It's ancient wisdom that science is just now catching up to.
2,000 years before anyone knew what an aMCC was, the ancient Stoic philosophers had this figured out. They called it voluntas, which is just Latin for voluntary hardship. Philosophers like Seneca, who was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, would intentionally practice being poor. He'd sleep on the hard floor, eat stale bread, wear rough clothes, not because he had to, but to train his mind. He was basically immunizing himself against bad fortune by experiencing it in small, manageable doses. And today, we can draw a direct line from that ancient practice to the modern science of building a bigger, tougher aMCC.
The best way to think about this is like building a callus on your hand. When you first start lifting weights, your hands are soft, and the friction hurts. But if you keep doing it, your skin adapts. It builds a tough, protective layer, a callus, so that same friction doesn't hurt anymore. The exact same process happens in your brain. By facing these small, voluntary hardships, you build what you could call a psychological callus. You thicken your aMCC, making you mentally tougher, and way more resilient when life throws the real, unavoidable challenges your way.
Now, let's be super clear here. The point is not to make your life miserable. It's the exact opposite. It's about strategically sprinkling in small, manageable stressors that I like to call micro-discomforts. Every single time you override that voice that wants comfort and ease, every time you choose the slightly harder path on purpose, you are doing one more rep for your aMCC. You are literally training the decision-making, impulse control part of your brain. Over time, you become the one in charge of your impulses instead of being a slave to them.
So, what does this actually look like day to day? Well, physically, you could take a cold shower. That act of forcing yourself to stay under the cold water when every fiber of your being is screaming at you to jump out, that is pure 100-proof aMCC training. Socially, it could be finally making that phone call you've been dreading. Intellectually, try reading a book that's just a little above your pay grade. Or better yet, try to work for 90 minutes straight with your phone in another room. These are all perfect examples of micro-discomforts that build that psychological callus.
Okay, if you only take one practical tool away from this whole explainer, let it be this one. I call it the 5-minute rule. It's so simple. The next time you're doing something hard and you feel that limbic friction kick in, that powerful urge to just stop, don't. Just tell yourself 5 more minutes. That's it. Just push through that wall of discomfort for 5 extra minutes. Because as we now know, that little gap, that space between wanting to quit and actually quitting, that is the fertile ground where your aMCC gets stronger.
So as we start to bring this all together, the real mission here is to completely shift our perspective. It's about learning to stop running away from discomfort and instead start seeing it as a friend, as an ally in our own growth.
Because here's the paradox of modern life. A life that's been perfectly optimized for comfort, for zero resistance, for ultimate ease, actually makes us weaker. It leads to a smaller aMCC and a fragile mind, a mind that cracks at the first sign of real adversity. By avoiding all the little, manageable struggles, we leave ourselves totally unprepared for the big ones that life eventually throws at all of us. And this really is the whole idea in a nutshell. That friction, that struggle, that feeling of discomfort. It is not a wall that's blocking your progress. It is the progress. It is the path itself. It's the very mechanism your brain uses to get stronger. And once you truly understand that, you will never look at a challenge the same way ever again. So, I'll leave you with this final thought, a challenge really. Based on everything we've just talked about, what is one small, manageable, uncomfortable thing that you know you should do, that you can choose to do today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Something that will be one more rep for your brain. The power to change is literally in your hands. Thanks for tuning in.